Hi everyone. In this video, we'll discuss about the fifth unit within our syllabus, that is cloud computing security architecture. Cloud computing security architecture, it is having a variety of factors that affect the implementation and performance of cloud architecture. There are different topics in this cloud security architecture which influence directly and indirectly that affect the cloud security. And main important thing is compliance issues and security management, information classification, and security awareness. If you observe the compliance issues, the compliance with the legal regulations should be supported by cloud security architecture. And also, when it comes to the classification of information, the cloud security policy generally addresses the classification of information. The entities that can potentially access information under a certain conditions to access the data, and the geographical jurisdiction of the stored data, whether or not to access the appropriate data from certain locations will be addressed within the classification. And also there are certain concepts regarding controls, and proper controls should be determined and verified that assure the cloud user with appropriate personal awareness, and education should be provided to the user so that the proper access of data can be done to provide security in a cloud system. In this regard, we are having a certain other related areas like trusted computing, which deals with the hardware and software things of the cloud system, and also providing the secured execution environment. Whenever the user want to execute their programs, they have to execute in a secured environment. And if at all the programs to be executed means we have to transfer the data from the user to the cloud system, so that we have to establish a communication link between the client system and the cloud server. For that, we need a secured communication environment so that the data can be transmitted in a secured manner. With this, we start our concept with compliance issues. In the compliance issues, the cloud vendor should provide transparency to the client by supplying information about the storage, and also the processing characteristics and other relevant account information. And when it comes to the public cloud environment, the user access the data from the cloud servers which are located in a different geographical regions, and the user doesn't know where the servers are located and from where the data is being accessed. And also the user doesn't know about the storage location of the data. That means the user just transfer the data from his device to the cloud servers, but he doesn't know where the cloud servers are located. And the user feel that he is transferring the data, but he doesn't know anything about the storage of data and from where the data is accessed and who are accessing the data, so that he feels an insecurity. And he also have a doubt about the security that is provided to his data. In this regard, the cloud service provider has to assure the user and tell where the data is stored, in which region servers the data is stored, and what are the security mechanisms that are used so that the data can be stored in a secured manner and also accessed in a secured manner. And we all know the cloud is a distributed environment, and the data is also processed in a distributed environment, and data is also stored in a distributed environment. Storage of data in distributed environment means the replication of data will be done, and the pieces of data will be stored in different geographical regions and also accessed from different geographical regions. And regarding that, the user must be aware of the data and where the data is stored. And other compliance issue is accessibility. The client used to access the data from anywhere and from any system, but the data is only stored in a certain region. And providing the data to that user is also done in a secured manner. And also the data is maintained in a cloud servers. Generally, the admins of the cloud servers can access the data. And regarding that, the acquiring sensitive information should be monitored and controlled and also protected, so that they have to apply some mechanisms or a secured mechanisms in accessing the data. That means the cloud server is there and the administrators are there on the cloud server. There must be some separation of duties like mechanism so that the admins can interact with the cloud servers. More than one user authentication is needed to access that server. The cloud provider claim for data protection and compliance, and it must be backed up by relevant certifications, loggings, and auditings. On any cloud system, the accessing of data or transfer of data that is done, it will be maintained in a log files. And to find any some compliance issues or any insecurity mechanisms has to be identified only by verifying the log files and auditing the log files. The auditing evaluates a service organization's internal controls to determine whether accepted best practices are being applied to protect client information. Now, coming to the security management, security architecture involves effective security management to realize the benefits of cloud computation. And proper security management and administration should identify the issues that are critical, and also to identify a proper access controls are maintained, and the vulnerability has to be identified and analyzed, and whether there is any change of controls that has to be properly done, and any certain malfunctioning occurs or any certain crisis happens, there must be a certain incident response team which has to address the incidents that happens on a cloud servers. And every cloud server, they used to fail at a certain instances. There must be a certain fault tolerant mechanism to address such type of issues. And we have to consider the disasters that may happen in different regions where the cloud servers are maintained. And for that, they have to take certain measures to recover the cloud servers if at all any disaster happens. And with all these things, important is business continuity planning. Any cloud service provider, to continue his business, he must have a certain plans to attract the cloud users. At the same time, to improve the business, then only he can maintain a certain cloud servers in a proper secured manner. And these areas enhance and support a proper verification of cloud security controls. And the enhanced mechanisms means they have to identify the new techniques and new mechanisms that help us to maintain the data in a cloud in a secured manner. Now coming to the controls, cloud security controls. The main objective of the cloud security control is to reduce the vulnerabilities to tolerable level. Ultimately, it minimizes the effect of the attack. Any loss or compromise of sensitive information regarding financial transactions may cause the loss of reputation. And also, there is a chance of physical destruction of resources due to the improper controls and due to the vulnerabilities that are there in a cloud system, and so that the attacker can attack the system through that weaknesses in a cloud system and try to access the data and try to transfer the data from the cloud systems. So that we have to apply a proper security control mechanism to protect the user's data and also to protect the cloud servers. There are four types of controls we can observe in this concept. And the first one is deterrent controls. Deterrent controls reduce the likelihood of deliberate attack. And reduce the likelihood means number of times the user can attack the system has to be reduced by applying the deterrent controls. And ultimately, the data in the system or the process in the system cannot be attacked. Preventive controls, and we have to take certain preventive measures to make a certain attack unsuccessful or reduce the impact of the attack on a cloud system. The preventive controls attempt to violate the security policy. That means a preventive controls must take into consideration that it has to protect the systems so that the attack may not happen on a system. And corrective controls, and corrective controls tells that once the attack happens on a system due to certain reasons, and they have to be identified, and they have to write some new code so that the attack may not happen on a system again and again, so that it reduces the effect of an attack on a system. Detective controls, it has to discover the type of attack that has happened on a system and triggers certain preventive and corrective measures so that the frequency of attacks has to be reduced. These are the different controls that has to be applied on a cloud system to maintain the cloud server in a secured manner. And the different controls are deterrent controls, preventive controls, corrective controls, and detective controls. And the complementary actions is the last concept within the general issues. The additional activities that has to be taken to provide cloud computing system to protect the system in a secured manner, and the management of that cloud system and monitoring of it, different SLAs that are being returned between the cloud service provider and the client has to be taken into consideration. Only based upon the SLAs only the service used to be provided to the client. and whether the proper SLAs are written, and whether they are being maintained by the cloud service provider or not has to be considered. And acquisition of adequate data to identify and analyze problem situations through dashboards. And generally, the users use it to access the data from the cloud servers. And in that accessing of data from cloud servers, whether any problems that occur in accessing of data, whether the data is accessed in time within a proper controls that are being applied in accessing the data, has to be maintained in a dashboards. And reduction of the loss of critical information caused by lack of controls. If at all we have not applied or we have not given proper privileges for a user to access the data, it may cause the loss of critical information. That has to be reduced. And proper management of data on an organization distributed computing resources. Generally, the cloud itself is a distributed computing. The resources are maintained in a different regions of a same cloud service provider, and the user can access data from a specified region, and the proper management of the user data has to be done. And the data used to be maintained in a replicated manner in a multiple systems, that must also be done properly. Provisioning of rapid recovery from problem situations, as we can't say any cloud system is 0% tolerable, and so that problems may occur on a certain system due to different sources or different reasons, and so that recovery plays a key role, so that there must be a certain provisioning mechanisms to fastly recover from the crashes. With this, we have completed the general issues in a cloud security architecture, and in the next video we'll discuss about the information classification.